Hello, this is Benjamin Williams. Welcome back to another Boson NetSim lab. Today we're going to be troubleshooting virtual router redundancy protocol rules. So our objective for this lab is to troubleshoot virtual router redundancy protocol, VRRP, and verify the configuration. So of course, as we always do, we have our topology right here in the top left. We're going to be reading our instructions from the top right, and we're going to be doing all of our configurations down here in the big window. So without further ado, let's go ahead and introduce the lab topology. It says the topology diagram below represents the net map of the simulator. For this lab, your network design includes 4 switches, A switch 1 and A switch 2, D switch 1 and D switch 2. A switch 1 and A switch 2 are layer 2 switches, and D switch 1 and D switch 2 are layer 3 switches. D switch 1 and D switch 2 will be referred to as routers throughout the lab. Layer 3 switches are capable of transmitting data at layer 2 switch speeds, but can also determine for themselves how traffic should flow at layer 3. So just taking a look at our topology diagram, we have 2 routers. It looks like they are both in OSPF area 0. So this is our backbone area. It looks like these distribution layer switches, their fast Ethernet 0.1 interfaces are in area 1. And this interface down here is area 2 for D switch 1. Both of the switches have the same thing. It looks like they have a port channel between these two. So one of these will usually be blocked since we are running 2 cables for redundancy. But since they formed a port channel, both of these cables can be used to transmit data. Our A switches have some redundancy as well to the D switches. Just in case one of those goes down, it has another way of getting out. And of course, spanning tree is going to only allow one path. It's going to block the other ones to prevent switching loops. And then we have our PC1 is in VLAN 100 and PC2 is in VLAN 200. So for these PCs to be able to communicate, they have to go to a layer 3 device. So that's that on that. I went on ahead and read through all of the commands and the description of the commands and went through the IP address table. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get into the questions. So it says troubleshoot virtual router redundancy protocol for VLAN 100. You are the administrator for your company's network. D switch 1 should always be the master VRRP router for your VRRP group 1 when D switch 1 is operating normally. In this task, you will determine why D switch 1 has not assumed the VRRP master role for VRRP group 1 and also correct the problem. So it's asking right here, it says on D switch 2 display VRRP information. So let's do that first. Let's go into global config and let's just do a show VRRP on D switch 2 to see what's going on. So it says what virtual router redundancy priority has been configured for VRRP group 1. So we can see right here that the priority is the default, which is 100. It says which device is the master VRRP router for group 1. So it looks like D switch 2 is the master, but it says D switch 1 is supposed to be the master. So let's go to D switch 1. Let's do a enable to get into privilege exec, and let's do a show VRRP. And here we can see that it says what is the priority for group 1. It is 100 at the default as well. And what priority and virtual IP has been configured for VRRP group 1 on D switch 1. So it doesn't have a priority configured, but it looks like the virtual IP address is 10.10.100.1. So it says based on what you have observed so far, why is D switch 1 the master router for virtual router redundancy protocol group 1? So if we go up here and we look at D switch 1's regular IP address is 10.10.100.10, and D switch 2's is 10.10.100.20. So since they both have the same priority, it's going to go with the highest interfaces IP address, which D switch 2 has the higher IP address, and both of their priorities are the same. So D switch 2 is going to assume the master role over D switch 1 because the IP address is the tiebreaker. So that's why D switch 2 is the master. So it says on D switch 1, configure VRRP group 1 to use a priority of 110. So let's go into privilege exec mode. Let's go into interface VLAN. It looks like this is VLAN 100, but let me do a do show run just to make sure. Do show run. And let's take a look to make sure that this, so it's on VLAN 100. So I was going, yeah, so VLAN 100. So let's do a interface VLAN 100. And I can look at my topology right here and just tell that that's VLAN 100. But just wanted to make sure. And let's do a VRRP group number 1. We're going to do a context help priority. And we're going to put 110 there. Hit enter on that. So now as you guys can see, it went from the backup router to the master router. Now, what did you notice about the output on D switch 1? We noticed that the output says this is the master router now. And it says on D switch 1 display VRRP information. So let's do a do show VRRP. And then it says, has D switch 1 assumed the master virtual router redundancy role for group 1? And it has. It says, what is the maximum value you can manually configure for a router's VRRP priority? And I think this is 254, but I'm not sure. Let me just show the solution, see what it's going to say. It says a manually configured VRRP priority can be any value in the range from 1 to 254. So yeah, and then if you configure it on the interface itself, it'll have a priority of 255. So if you use the same IP address that's configured on the VLAN for the actual virtual router redundancy protocol IP, then it'll be a priority of 255. So it says this task 2, it says troubleshoot VRRP for VLAN 200. So it says you are the administrator for your company's network. D-Switch 2 should always be the master virtual router redundancy protocol router for VRRP group 2 when D-Switch 2 is operating normally. In this task, you will determine why D-Switch 2 has not assumed the virtual router redundancy protocol master router role for virtual router redundancy protocol group 2 and also correct the problem. So it says on D-Switch 1 display VRRP information. So we're here now. It says what virtual IP address and priority have been configured for virtual router redundancy protocol group 2. So it has a priority of 255, which means that it looks like this is configured with the same IP address of the actual interface for VLAN 200, which we can see that is the case. It has a virtual IP address of 10.10.200.10. And if I do a do show IP interface brief, we can see that these IP addresses, so 10.10.200.10, and also the virtual IP that it's using is 10.10.200.10. So that's why the priority is configured for 255. So it says on D switch 2, let's do it says what device is the master router for VRRP group 2, and of course it's going to be D switch 1 because of its priority. Let's go to D switch 2 now and do a do show. We won't have to do a do show. Let's do a show VRRP because we're in privilege exec mode. And it says what is D switch 2's virtual router redundancy protocol router role for VRRP group 2. So it is our backup router, and it has a priority of 100. And it says what is the virtual IP address. The virtual IP address is 10.10.200.10. And what is it saying? What is the priority? It has a priority of 100. So on D switch 1, display a summary of the IP addressing information, which we did right here. It says what is the significance of the IP address that is configured for the virtual LAN VLAN 200 interface on D switch 1 when compared to the virtual IP address that is configured for virtual router redundancy protocol group 2. So I just pointed that out. They're using the same IP address. It's basically what it's asking me. So it says on D switch 2 display a summary of IP addressing information. What device will become the master virtual router redundancy protocol router for VRRP group 2 if they were configured if they were to be configured VRRP group 2 with a virtual IP address of 10.10.200.1 and why. So if they both were configured with this virtual IP address, dswitch 2 would become the master router because of its IP address is going to be higher than dswitch 1's by default. So that would be the answer to that question. Because if we look at, let's go to right here, dswitch 1 has a IP address of 10.10.200.10, and dswitch 2, let's do a show IP interface brief, and it has a higher IP address. So this dswitch 2 should be, if they were both set to this IP address right here for the virtual router redundancy protocol, dswitch 2 would be the master. So it says on dswitch 1, change the virtual IP address for virtual router redundancy protocol group 2 to 10.10.200.1. So let's go on dswitch 1. Let's do an exit, and let's go into interface VLAN 200, and let's go into VRRP group 2. And well, let's first remove our configuration. So no VRRP group 2 IP, which would be a 10. I don't know if I need to do this or not. Let me do a do show VRRP. Do show VRRP. And okay, so that is our, just wanted to take a look at our virtual IP address. So let's do a no VRRP group 2 IP, and we need to take away the 10.10.200.10 configuration. And let's do a VRRP2 IP of 10.10.200.1, which it wants us to have. Now we can see that it goes from the backup router to the master router. But it should be, that should be taken away after I do the configuration on dswitch 2. So let's do a global configuration mode change. Let's go into interface VLAN 200, and let's do a VRRP2 IP. Well, first let's do a no VRRP group 2 of IP of 10.10.200.10 to get rid of that configuration we don't want. And then let's do a VRRP2 IP 10.10.200.1 to get the right IP. And it takes over as the master, as I said it would. dswitch 1 should now be the backup, which it is. It moved to the backup role. So it says on dswitch 1, verify that dswitch 1 is now the backup router. So let's do a do show VRRP. And we can see that it is the backup router now for VLAN 200. And let's go into dswitch 1, do a do show VRRP. And it is the master. So all is well here. I think we solved this lab the way that it wants me to. So let's go ahead and hit grade. Hopefully we got everything right, and we did. So thank you guys for watching this one. I'll see you in the next one.